Hello everyone, this is Ruslan Bailov, and you're watching the daily analysis of the Ukrainian front lines. Let's start with a piece of news published overnight by the Washington Post. Honestly, complete nonsense. They claim that Putin supposedly hinted to Trump that he was ready to give up the occupied parts of the Zaporizhzhia and Kherson regions in exchange for Donetsk. Seriously? What about the land corridor to Crimea? And besides, the area of those regions is almost 3 times larger than what remains in Donetsk. In short, utter nonsense. The fighting continues, and so do we, analyzing the situation on the front. All right, friends, remember yesterday's episode? At least those who watched it. We discussed the breakthrough of Russian forces in the Kharkiv region and their advance into the Dnipropetrovsk region. Think that's all? Not even close. The front lines of the Ukrainian armed forces continue to collapse in several areas. Over the past 24 hours, Russian troops made an incredible push, more than 7 kilometers deep. And it happened in a sector where no one expected a breakthrough. Look here, this is the Lyman sector. Until now, all attention was focused on Drobyshev, Stavki, and the approaches to Lyman from the direction of Zarikne. By the way, things are going quite well there too. There were reports that Russian soldiers were seen in the forest on the outskirts of Lyman, but it's still unclear whether those were reconnaissance diversion groups or full assault units reaching the city's edge. For that reason, the maps have not yet been updated. But look at what the Ukrainians have drawn on their maps. Let's open their deep state resource. This is the Ukrainian cartographic map. See this? They've shaded a huge grey zone stretching right up to Lyman's outskirts. Well, fine. When more reliable and confirmed data appear, we'll discuss that sector again. Now let's move to the Russian breakthrough. While everyone was focused here, Ukrainian defenses elsewhere were extremely thin, and Russian troops took advantage of that. The result is what you see on screen. First, the northern part of the town of Novoselivka has been cleared. Second, Russian units advanced along the Lyman-Izium highway, entered the Sviatohirsk forest, and reached the sewage treatment facilities. It's not yet confirmed whether those facilities are under Russian control. Information is being clarified, but footage has already appeared from the breakthrough, or rather, what's left of the Ukrainian soldiers who didn't manage to escape during the Russian assault through the forest. Thanks to this advance, the town of Yarova has now been blocked from the north. From the current Russian positions to Yarova, it's only about 1.5 kilometers. Next, look at Oleksandrivka on the border with the Kharkiv region. Just yesterday, Russian positions were still around 10 kilometers away from the village, and no one thought about an advance there. But now, Russian forces are less than 3 kilometers from Oleksandrivka, and beyond it, the Kharkiv region and the city of Izium. Yes, friends, we now need to separate these sectors clearly. Everything on the left bank of the Nitrus River is the Lyman direction, focused on the city of Lyman. But everything on the right bank of the Nitrus is no longer the Lyman front. It's already the Izium sector, and that's not all. This offensive opens new, promising opportunities on another section of the front. Let me explain, and I'll even show you on a terrain map. First, let's clarify, Izium, despite this 7-kilometer breakthrough, and despite the fact that the city is now 7 kilometers closer to the Russian army, remains a somewhat distant goal for now. So, what's the nearest realistic objective this advancement could achieve? Some might say the city of Sviatohirsk. I've even seen some Telegram military analysts write that the next logical step is to take Sviatohirsk. But I disagree. I don't yet see clear prospects there. Yes, it's true that Russian forces could reach the village of Sosnove, seize the Sviatohirsk railway station, then move south into the northern part of Sviatohirsk. That's a realistic and doable scenario. However, to take and hold the city completely, control of the opposite riverbank is absolutely necessary. Let me explain why, visually. Here's Lyman, here's Sviatohirsk. Now look at the opposite bank. The elevation difference is enormous. Ukrainian positions are located on those heights. Here's the Sviatohirsk Lavra monastery, which the Ukrainian army turned into a fortress. All these heights, including the Lavra itself, remain under Ukrainian control. Therefore, to take the city, Russian forces must first capture the opposite bank. Once that happens, the whole city lies open like on the palm of your hand. Ukrainian positions would become easy targets. But if Russian troops attack from the north without taking those heights, they themselves would become easy targets, suffering heavy losses and failing to gain full control of the city. So of course, Russian command won't do that. Most likely they'll bypass the city, block it, and stop there for now. What will definitely happen, though, is the clearing of the remaining parts of the Donetsk region here to form a solid launch zone for a future offensive toward Izium, and that such an offensive will come, if the war continues into the year 2026, is almost certain. Reports are already coming from the ground that Russian assault units are trying to enter Korovyi Yar. If they succeed, and at the same time other Russian forces capture Oleksandrivka, the front will take this shape. And then Izium is right there, very close. So, quite interesting developments. We'll, of course, keep following them closely. Now, about the Lyman area specifically, what's important here? Russian forces took control of half of the town of Novoselivka. In addition, from Derelov they advanced 1 kilometer and reached the outskirts of Drobyshev. And Drobyshev is not a small settlement. That's why it's classified as an urban-type settlement rather than a village. If the Russians capture it, then Lyman is practically done, because the city is already being approached from the east via Zarichny, and if the approach also comes from the west, that's the endgame. The total area taken under Russian control in this sector is nearly 20 square kilometers, a very solid result. But that's not the only success achieved by the Russian army over the past day. Good news also came from the Kostiantynivka direction. There, troops completed the assault on Pleshchevka and took the village under full control. Even Ukrainian sources confirmed it. Moreover, there was already an attempt to storm the southern part of Ivanopilia. It's the last major, actually the last any, settlement on the southern approaches to Kostiantynivka from this direction. Russian troops didn't manage to secure a foothold inside the southern part yet, but they did consolidate on the approaches near the farm areas. Once they take Ivanopilia under control, the southern access to the city will be open. In the Klyban-Byk area, Russian forces advanced all the way to the reservoir. Thus, the entire area of about 12 square kilometers in front of the reservoir is now fully blocked from both sides. The Ukrainian troops trapped there are surrounded, pressed against the water. Yes, they might try to cross the reservoir by boat, but Russian drones would immediately destroy them. So this entire section will soon be marked in red on the maps. Overall, summing up, another disastrous day for the Ukrainian armed forces. They retreated again and lost an additional 23 square kilometers of territory. Zelensky is calling for a ceasefire along the line of contact. But why should Russia agree to that if its army is confidently and successfully advancing? And now, Russian forces are very close to capturing 2 major cities, Mirnohrad and Pokrovsk. On the Pokrovsk direction, reports indicate that Russian units advanced along the railway junction and into the central part of the city. The railway station is under Russian control. The Ukrainian side has admitted losing the villages of Troyanda and Leontovichi. Russian troops entered the western part of Pokrovsk. The footage confirms it. The area of advance exceeds 5 square kilometers. Russian forces took Leontovichi and are pushing toward Pokrovsk from there. Ukrainian analysts recently admitted progress inside the city. Russian forces also captured Troyanda, with fighting continuing to the north and east. The Russian army has reached the northwestern outskirts of Pokrovsk, less than 2 kilometers from Hryshain. From the direction of Novopavlivka, Russian units entered Hnativka. From Balahan and Moskovska, the army is consolidating in the southern part of Mirnohrad. From the direction of Krasny Lyman, Russian forces are advancing toward the village of Svetlay, located on the northwestern outskirts of Mirnohrad. In Rodinsky, Ukrainian troops are holding the central area and launching counterattacks westward toward the road leading to Dobropilia. Overall, Pokrovsk and Mirnohrad are in full operational encirclement, and judging by drone footage, they are effectively trapped in a pocket, as Russian UAVs control the entire agglomeration and are neutralizing all transport routes. The situation in Pokrovsk is catastrophic. The Kiev government is keeping silent about the problem, while Zelensky is demanding that Syrskyi hold this sector at any cost, until the Budapest meeting between Trump and Vladimir Putin. However, all experts point out that the Pokrovsk funnel is devouring the best Ukrainian reserves, which is causing collapses on other fronts, and in the long term will lead to even more disastrous consequences. It's worth adding that Russian forces on this axis are rapidly replenishing their prisoner exchange pool. They are reportedly capturing between 12 and 15 Ukrainian soldiers per day here alone. Dnipropetrovsk direction. Fighting continues in Poltavka and near Uspenivka. The Russian Ministry of Defense officially announced control over the village of Privolne on the bank of the Yancha River. Russian forces also entered Vishniva and consolidated their positions there. Ukrainian forces are counterattacking in the area of Alexeyevka, Novopavlivka sector. The Russian army has expanded its zone of control near the villages of Filia and Orikovo. Reports from Kupiansk indicate that Russian troops continue systematic advances within the city limits. Russian forces have taken full control of the railway section northwest of Estakadna station up to the Kupiansk southern station. The resistance of the Ukrainian garrison at Kupiansk southern has been broken. Estakadna station was brought under control a few days ago. Now, several Ukrainian groups remain trapped in a narrow pocket around Kuznechnaya Street, where Russian forces are conducting an operation to split this pocket into two and completely block the remaining Ukrainian units inside. The loss of Kupiansk Southern, the city's main passenger station, effectively marks the collapse of Ukrainian defenses in the area. Earlier, Ukrainian MP Mariana Bezula publicly urged to acknowledge the obvious, writing that Ukrainian forces no longer maintain real control over Kupiansk and therefore must either start a liberation operation or withdraw to new defensive lines. The fall of Kupiansk is approaching. Zaporizhzhia sector. Fierce positional battles continue in Primorske. Kyiv's forces counterattack, while Russian assault groups try to push forward. No major changes there yet. That's all for the frontline overview. Now let's move to the political situation. CNN reports that Trump has formed the impression that Zelensky does not want peace, but rather seeks escalation. Both in public and private conversations, Trump made it clear to Zelensky that as long as Ukraine does not receive the long-range missiles capable of reaching the most distant parts of Russia, which Zelensky keeps requesting, there will be no change in US policy. One official stated that Trump got the impression that Ukraine aims to prolong and escalate the conflict. Other White House officials believe that both sides should reach a deal now, as later the conditions will only worsen. We don't think Trump only just realized that Zelensky is dragging out the war. More likely, this is the first indirect signal from the White House to Kiev's office. The previous stage was when Trump threatened Russia with tomahawks. Perhaps now criticism from the US president will be directed at Zelensky himself. Everything will depend on the meeting in Budapest. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán also made a statement. Why Budapest? Since yesterday, people around the world have been asking why Hungary has become the meeting place for the presidents of the US and Russia. The answer is simple. We are the only ones left in Europe on the path of peace. We have never lectured anyone, whether in government or opposition. We have never closed communication channels. It's very difficult to convince someone of anything if you don't talk to them. Most importantly, we have consistently and persistently supported the cause of peace for many years. Cooperation instead of confrontation, mutual respect instead of stigmatization. This is the path to peace. Hungary today is the one country in Europe where there is a real chance that US-Russian negotiations may finally lead to peace, and where even European interests might prevail. Brussels has isolated itself, but we will continue the dialogue. And here come Orbán's signature narratives. Brussels is nothing, Budapest is everything. Nicely said. Globalists will have a hard time if the meeting indeed takes place. They will, of course, fight to derail it. Rumors are already spreading that Zelensky appeared deeply disappointed after his visit to the United States. He believed he was flying there to receive tomahawks, but once again, he was deceived. In private conversations, Zelensky allegedly said that Trump is in league with Putin. Gossip also claims that Trump gave Zelensky an informal 2-week deadline to launch an offensive. But everyone is confident this will be the final act for the Ukrainian armed forces. If Zelensky fails to launch a counter-offensive, then he will be pressured into an unfavorable peace, and immediate elections will be held in Ukraine, which would mean a political collapse for both Zelensky and Yermak, even despite their domestic grip on power. Now everyone is talking about Zelensky's defeat in Washington. Even his sponsors are unhappy that he backed down in front of Trump. Meanwhile, a Venezuelan Navy landing ship ran aground and sustained serious damage during exercises simulating a U.S. military invasion. The failed coastal maneuver caused the ship's bow to flood rapidly. Caracas reportedly had only 4 such ships in total. Venezuela is suffering major military losses even before any potential hostile actions by Trump, who has already authorized the CIA to carry out covert operations against the Venezuelan leadership. Maduro has accused the U.S. of aggression, warning that any attempt to attack will be regarded as an act of war against a sovereign nation. That's all for today, friends. Thank you for watching and staying until the end. Make sure to subscribe, leave your thoughts in the comments, and stay tuned. Tomorrow, we'll continue tracking the front line and the global political shifts together. See you in the next report. This was Ruslan Belov.